What they're against, Mr. Speaker, is the government approach. It's the government approach, the bullyism that was used to force people off their lands. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we heard about eminent domain. We heard about, the title. Many of their lands are government owned, and it's only owned by a private person once they have title, lease, or transport. But Mr. Speaker, we on this side of the house knew exactly what was happening to the residents of Peters Hall, because they reached out to us, Mr. Speaker, and they said to us, look, we have no difficulty in moving, but what the government would have done, moved in on them and said to them that because of the construction of this bridge, they have to move. Mr. Speaker, one resident, Mr. Speaker, that resident hadn't a copy of his transport. And when I engaged that resident, I was able to acquire a copy of his transport. Mr. Speaker, on the 27th of this month, on the 27th of last month, I visited with that resident. And I heard his cry. But I believe, Mr. Speaker, if the agencies, whether the Ministry of Human Services, which should be a ministry with love and compassion, they should have been working closely with the ministries of public infrastructure and also the housing and water ministry. Because, Mr. Speaker, you would recall that, as Honorable Member Ganesh Mahipal rightfully put, land is sentimental. Land has value, Mr. Speaker. But then again, when persons are attached to their lands, I believe if the government has to acquire these lands, things could have been done in a more mature way. We know that you have to relocate. We know that the children will be disturbed. That very resident said to me, they have been living on that land since 1975. And in the 49th year, I am now forced to give up my land. And, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security, we have so many social workers in this country, but the social workers were not able to work with the families so that at least their minds are prepared when it comes to them having to relocate. So, Mr. Speaker, I trust that with this new amendment, Mr. Speaker, I am hoping that the government will see the wisdom in what played out in Peters Hall, Mr. Speaker. And in future, for future development, we will not see a repeat of what occurred in Peters Hall and in Caneview. The other issue in the initial amendments, Mr. Speaker, had to do with adequate compensation. Just before that meeting yesterday, that was another concern to me, because how I read the bill, Mr. Speaker, the amendment, is that the Minister of Legal Affairs will determine what is adequate compensation.